It was because my husband and I had just gotten married and we really wanted to try and have a baby. And my new OB did blood work right there, scheduled me for a transvaginal ultrasound, all the things that she was supposed to do to like help get this figured out. I come in for my follow-up appointment and she says, yeah, everything's normal. So you're all set. And I'm like, no, everything's not normal. I'm 28 years old and I have a period once a year. Like, that's not normal.
Hey, beautiful. Welcome back to PCOS Unfiltered. I'm your host, Lindsie, and today's conversation is such an important one because we're not just talking about PCOS. We're talking about what happens when your body is trying to get your attention and no one is really listening. Today, I'm joined by Bianca DeLuco, whose journey is one that so many women will recognize. Years of symptoms, being dismissed, being told everything is normal, and having to advocate for herself over and over again just to get answers. In fact, it took her 13 years to receive a diagnosis. But what makes this conversation so powerful is where it goes next. Bianca brings such a beautiful perspective through her work in mind, body, spirit healing, and we really dive into the deeper layers of what's actually going on beneath the surface, not just physically, but emotionally and energetically as well. In this episode, we talk about the gaps in women's healthcare and why so many women feel dismissed, the connection between stress, the nervous system, and hormone health, what polyvagal theory actually is in a way that finally makes sense, how your daily habits like sleep, movement, and even your phone impact your healing, and how to start shifting out of a survival mode and into a place where your body can actually begin to heal. This conversation is going to help you understand your body on a completely different level, and more importantly, give you tools to start supporting it in a way that actually works. As a reminder, the content shared on PCOS Unfiltered is for informational and educational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests are not intended to serve as medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, exercise, or treatment plan. The information shared is based on personal experience and expert interviews and is not a substitute for professional medical guidance. Now, let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Bianca DeLuco. Welcome back, and welcome to Bianca because I'm super excited for this. I can't wait to dive into your story. So let's just kind of start there. So tell us from the beginning, your story, your symptoms that you were experiencing to diagnosis, and then even just, what you learned and how you felt along the way.
Yeah, it's really interesting because as we've been connecting regarding PCOS, it's made me reflect a lot in my journey. And I just recognized in our most recent conversation that it took me 13 years to get a diagnosis, which is kind of insane and incredible all at the same time. But so back when I was in high school as a teenager, all my friends were getting their menstrual cycles, like a normal part of what was happening in girlhood, and it wasn't happening for me. And I wasn't super upset about it. But then as I got to about 17 is when I had my first menstrual cycle, and it was incredibly heavy, incredibly painful. I passed out in the school bathroom from pain. And my mom brings me to my OB, and my OB is like, well, you don't really need periods unless you're trying to get pregnant, so it's fine. And like as a now 30-year-old woman, I look back on that guidance and I'm like, it is so backwards and so actually insane. But so they were like, if you want, you can go on birth control. Birth control will help get your cycles regulated. And so I was on birth control, but I was like an irresponsible 17-year-old. So I would sleep in and forget to take it, or stay out late and forget to take it. And so at that point it was like, random spotting here and there, and then missed periods, and then just a complete and total mess. And then finally they said, well, why don't we put you on the NuvaRing? Which I think was one of the worst decisions because it was so uncomfortable and kept falling out. And I was like, does this happen to anybody else? Because I can't imagine that this is normal. So from there, I just stopped going to the OB. And it wasn't until I was probably like 28 that I finally went back. My OB was also incredibly insensitive, was like downright mean to me. So which is another thing that's so bizarre to me. Like, how do you expect young women to get comfortable and feel empowered in something so important if you're going to treat them less than? So when I finally went back, it was because my husband and I had just gotten married and we really wanted to try and have a baby. And my new OB did blood work right there, scheduled me for a transvaginal ultrasound, all the things that she was supposed to do to like help get this figured out. I come in for my follow-up appointment and she says, yeah, everything's normal. So you're all set. And I'm like, no, everything's not normal. I'm 28 years old and I have a period once a year. Like, that's not normal. That's actually far from normal. The fact that you're sitting here and telling me that this is normal is kind of insane. So I was really lucky because my sister-in-law married a PA who took special interest in hormones and women's health when he was studying. And so I was discussing with my sister-in-law our frustrations and like our fertility journey. He was like, listen, I'm not, obviously you're a provider. I'm not specialized in this, but if you're comfortable and you want to send me over your stuff, I would love to take a look at it. So I sent him my files when I got home that week, and he goes, yeah, you have PCOS, like no doubt, not a question in my mind about it. I'm going to send it to a colleague who's in fertility to get like a second opinion, but I really think that you're a classic case. And then she comes back and says the same thing, like classic case, PCOS, not a doubt in my mind. And so their recommendation was to try inositol. And so I started doing inositol twice a day. And at that point, after doing the inositol twice a day, I started menstruating almost like quarterly. So from going to every once a year, is usually about July, to quarterly was a pretty big improvement. And so I had brought these concerns to my primary as well. And he made a referral to one of the major hospitals in our area where I could see someone who was an OB that more specialized in this. And within my first appointment with her, she gave me a formal diagnosis of PCOS. And that was just like 3 months ago. So my informal diagnosis from like my brother-in-law was a little over a year ago, but having like an actual diagnosis from like a practitioner was only within the last 3 months. So it's been kind of ever changing and growing and learning a lot along the way. I'm learning like how much like our diet is like impacted in our hormonal health, learning about our stress levels and our hormonal health. It seems like there's so many factors that are not talked about. So yeah, it's been quite the journey.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So did you have cysts as well?
So my ultrasound showed that I had bilateral follicular cysts. So yes,
Okay.
which was the funny part to me, because when I got the clean bill of health from my first OB, which was a different OB than when I was a kid, I think is an important distinction. So this is not the first person that I've seen who said like, you're fine, don't worry about it, no big deal. And she was the one who did the ultrasound and read the report to say that it was fine. So then to see it with my own eyes, I'm like, I'm not a medical professional and I can read this and see that it says, oh, I forgot this too. This is really funny. I think that you'll enjoy this. When I was in the ultrasound tech says, have you been diagnosed with PCOS? And I said, no, why? She goes, I was just wondering. And so immediately, even from that conversation, I was like, well, she didn't say that for no reason. Like she saw something that made it indicate that that was probably what was happening. And actually from her comment was what made me go into like Facebook groups for PCOS and start learning about, well, what the heck even is this? What does this mean? What does this look like? Like how are, what are other people experiencing as far as this? I'm learning that a lot of women have like facial hair, which is something I've had my whole life. And I just thought it was because I was Italian, even though it was getting worse as I was getting older. And things like, inability to like manage weight really, or, obviously the missed period is like a major red flag, but yeah, a lot of different things that were just like seemingly normal because they were my lived experience, that I was like listening to other people and being like, oh, so this isn't as normal as I maybe thought it was. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate you sharing that too, because especially the kind of being dismissed, being told that you only need to have your period, if you're trying to get pregnant. Like, no, that's your body should be going through that. And if it's not, like that's yeah, like your body's trying to tell you something, right? If you're not going through that monthly, because that's what our bodies are supposed to do. Um, it's just amazing being brushed off like that. I mean, I don't know if you can answer this, but from your experience, kind of what do you like, where do you think the breakdown is happening with these physicians that are like they just don't know? It just seems like a lot of them just don't know because you're not the first person that has, you know, said anything like that.
I actually really love that you've asked this because, right, PCOS is something that only affects women, right? And so both of those, all three of my OBs have been female. And so I'm like, so you're working with a female in a female dominated field that serves only women, and you don't know anything about this, that seems to impact a lot of women. Simultaneously, the two people that really advocated for me and supported me in getting answers was my brother-in-law, who's a male in a different state, who isn't like in direct care of me at all, and my primary care provider, who is also a male, who advocated for me and pushed for me to get referrals and answered questions and seemed to know more about PCOS than my female OBGYN, whose specialty it is. If I'm honest, speaking about the medical system as a whole, and I think this has been shown, a lot more research goes into things that affect men's health than it does women's health, right? There's not a lot of research or conversations happening around PCOS. Or even I have a lot of, I own a yoga studio, and a lot of women in my studio are between, I mean, I have wide ranges, but I have a group of women that are about their 50s, right, who are starting to go through either premenopause or menopause itself. And they're like, yeah, it just is how it is. And then one woman's like, no, other countries don't just treat it like this. Like, we treat this like we treat it. We don't just say, like, live with it, you're stuck with it. Yeah. We like actually support women on their journey as they're going through these changes. So I think in the US specifically, there's a big gap between women's health and men's health, unfortunately. And I think that's playing a big role in probably why we have to fight so hard to be advocated for, and fight so hard to get answers, and fight so hard for anything. So I think it's the system as a whole that's kind of failing women, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're not the first one to point that out, unfortunately either. Um, I think PCOS is becoming more prominent, more, I don't want to say common because it still shouldn't be, still shouldn't be common, but there's definitely more cases out there than I think we even, realize. And maybe back in the day, it wasn't studied, like it is now. But yes, there has been some research out there that I think just women's health in general hasn't been studied until somewhat more recently. I think coupled with probably, I don't know if you see it too, but for women, just we're the caretakers, right? So it's just kind of always like do, you're fine. There's nothing like crazy, life threatening going on. Like, so if you've been living with this, you're just going to continue living with this. If it gets worse, let me know. And it's just like you're just pushing through it all. And I think I see that with a lot of women too.
I was actually listening to a podcast where this woman was talking about blood work specifically, and for women specifically, and she was stating that, like, normal range is like range is different than like optimal range. So when you go in and your blood work shows that everything's like normal, like that doesn't, and you're like, well, then why do I feel like crap? It's because those ranges aren't designed to like help us really thrive. It's like, oh, you're surviving good enough. Like, you're not dead. That's fine. Like, yeah. Which I think for most of us is like discouraging, right? Like, we're constantly fatigued, or we're like having like mood swings, or we're like just not feeling like ourselves. And I think we almost internalize it sometimes. Like there's something wrong with me that's like making me go through these experiences. Well, everybody else is just like thriving and living these like radiant lives. And like, why is it that like that's not true for me, even though everything's normal? I think that conversation around normal needs to change too. Like, because when we're told that everything's operating fine and we don't feel fine, I think it makes us feel like there's something directly wrong with us and there's a problem with us individually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's an excellent point. I know, like, on my own health journey too, that's when I kind of learned about the optimal ranges. As I see a functional medicine practitioner, and yeah, and she focuses on the optimal numbers. Because it's true. And then that's especially when it gets frustrating, I think, for women, because you're going to the doctor and your labs are fine, maybe the ultrasound is fine. Um, but you're like, I know something is wrong,
Yeah. To
and
go into an OB at 28 years old without periods and be told everything's normal, I'm like, no,
yeah.
that's not normal. By definition, that is not normal. Everybody else in the same age group is having a polar opposite experience to me. So to sit here and tell me that everything is
Yeah.
normal is just fundamentally wrong.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's no other way to explain that.
Yeah. So where are you kind of at with your journey, right now? Like since even just from a year ago, suspecting that it was PCOS, now getting the diagnosis, like how are you approaching it?
So I've definitely put a larger emphasis into a whole foods diet. I do eat a plant-based diet, and a lot of that has been in making sure that I'm consuming enough protein. Um, I am a snack girly. I am a pizza girly. So I've had to be increasingly mindful of like how much of those types of things I'm consuming because I know that while I enjoy them, they might not be fully supportive. And even in some places, finding alternatives that both support me, but I also enjoy. Like I found this like chickpea crust recipe that I love, and so sometimes I'm just dabbling in that instead. So a lot of thinking about like taking what I want and adding what I need kind of mentality to feel more supported in my journey with food specifically. Also being incredibly more active, like being mindful of, like walking after meals to help with that insulin resistance. I've started adding weightlifting to my like movement routine. I'm still taking the inositol and have also started taking like magnesium at night, being more mindful of omega-3 consumption, especially because, one of the main sources of omega-3s is fish and I don't eat fish. So it's like, well, what other sources can we like bring these in? So a lot of it has been learning about, and I will say that it's not my plant-based diet that caused this because I've only been plant-based for about 10 years. And like I said, it's been, I was a teenager and when this was happening originally. So a lot of it was like looking at like my diet and my lifestyle choices and considering like what things I can do to greater support myself. As you know, but your listeners don't yet, like I've been practicing yoga for 10 years, teaching yoga for 10 years, breathing exercises, meditation, journaling, things like that. So that was already kind of a regular part of my wellness routines, but adding in more consistent practices and even different practices. So once I started learning about like polyvagal theory and nervous system states and things like that, adding, different types of tools and resources and from like that perspective. So I think it's very like multi-layered in my opinion. I also was researching like teas and things that are supposed to be supportive. So like drinking like spearmint tea. And I am now at a point where I am menstruating quarterly instead of annually. So obviously not the ideal like 28-day cycle, but a significant improvement from where I previously was. My energy levels are a lot better. So that's really
Awesome.
cool. I haven't had significant changes in my weight, but I think weight is kind of like a weird subjective thing. Like I know I have much more muscle tone now than I previously had. So, and the number on the scale isn't really representative of much, I don't think, especially when you're
Yeah.
building muscle. Um, yeah, more energy. has been honestly one of the bigger things for me. Sex drive too. My libido, like pretty much like non-existent for like a
Oh.
while, and now that's like happy to say that that's returned. So yeah, like a lot of factors,
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
positive change over the last year, and definitely my moods too. Like, you know, even with all of the yoga and the meditation and the journaling and the whatever, I'm just definitely a lot more regulated and like not as easy to anger or anything like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of positive changes. And it wasn't all like at once. It wasn't like I woke up the day after I started taking inositol and was like, oh, I can walk this. It's been like a year of like very consistently like making conscious choices. As easy as it is, I think sometimes to just like take a magic pill and wake up the next day like miraculously better. I think PCOS for me personally has been a journey of like constant change and constant learning and a constant like willingness to like get closer to myself and listen to myself and notice how my body is like responding to things and continue make choices that bring me in the direction that I can go.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you said so many good things there because, especially with like taking the inositol, but you're still doing all these other, things still to help, listening to your body. That's super important. The awareness piece is just like really the first step, when you think about it, more aware of what you're putting in your body and, how those things can serve you and, other stressors in your life and all that stuff. And I always say, yes, listen, no judgment, just, be open to it, right? So then you can, make the changes. But there's definitely ups and downs, I'm sure. You probably have some, high highs and low lows along the way. But
But
yeah,
yeah, I think too, something that's really, really helped me is not having like an all or nothing mentality, right?
yeah,
Like, so I just got back from like hosting a retreat, right? And while I was there, I didn't run, I didn't lift any weights, like, you know what I mean? Like, all of these things I've been like doing to like consistently support myself. But it's like, I think some people like feel really bad when they come back from like a trip and they're like, oh, well, I didn't do the things I said I was going to do and whatever. So it's like, I know I couldn't stay consistent this time, right? So it's like these stories I tell ourselves when in reality, if you can just like be more gentle and compassionate with yourself to say like, hey, it's totally fine that, you know, I've fallen off track, like give myself space to whether that's today or tomorrow or in a couple of days, get back on track. Like, I think the more we like criticize and shame ourselves for not doing the right things or the healthy things, that's where we like fall off track completely. So getting getting back on track since coming home from that trip has been a little more challenging than I anticipated, but I'm like being gentle with myself, and that's what's helping me not fall back into old habits, which I think is super important. Another thing that I forgot to mention is sleep hygiene, like something I've been really, really good about. I no longer bring my phone into the bedroom. It either gets plugged into in the kitchen or the bathroom, but it does not come into the bedroom anymore because I notice if I bring it to bed, even now, like since months of doing this, if I bring it into my bedroom, I wake up more in the middle of the night. Like it's like this subconscious, like I don't know, like something about it being nearby. I don't know if it's like, I don't know what it is about it, but there's something about having it nearby that
yeah,
significantly disrupts my sleep. I've also been doing like the magnesium before bed. And years ago, I was talking to one of my, like, I had a mental health therapist, and I was talking to her about, you know, that I sleep all night, but I wake up like really exhausted. So she said, well, you might not be getting deep sleep even if you are sleeping. And I was like, well, every time I put lavender oil in my diffuser, I wake up feeling much more refreshed. She's like, then do that. Like, what, why is this a conversation? So I've been like really consistent about making sure that that's something that happens every single night. And I notice a huge difference in my energy levels. And I think it's so intertwined, right? Because it's like if you have poor sleep and you wake up feeling fatigued, you're not going to have like the energy and capacity to prepare a meal that's as nourishing for you or to then go exercise and lift those weights or take that walk or whatever it is you're doing to support yourself, which, and it just like snowballs, right? So it's
it
like
does.
if you can start with like the smallest, most basic things to like support yourself, I think that like they're building blocks, right? Like when you eat like crap, then you feel even more exhausted, and then you're moving even less, and then it drops us deeper into those shame cycles. And so it's like, you might think that putting lavender in your diffuser is something so small and insignificant that it does not matter, or bringing your phone to bed versus plugging it in a different room is so significant it does not matter. But if you look at how it impacts like one aspect of your life and how that snowballs into the other aspects of your life, it's like, no, this is essential.
Exactly.
Even if it's simple.
Yeah. Yeah. It becomes a vicious cycle for sure. And so, yeah, just making one small change, like even just try it for like a night or a couple nights, and see if you notice a difference. One thing I, of course, talk about too is turning off the devices, before bedtime. Ideally, an hour would be great, but even like maybe 30 minutes to start, just try it like once or twice and see how you feel. Just to kind of, like you said, break that cycle, because it can just snowball, from
I
there.
will say something that I've really enjoyed and appreciated outside of the health benefits of leaving my phone outside of my room is that my partner and I are connecting a lot more. Like we are having conversations before bed and like connecting with each other. And I think in such a busy, fast-paced lifestyle where he's working and I'm working, and we don't have kids yet, but like maintaining our household and spending time with friends and family and prioritizing our wellness, like all the things that comes with being an adult. There's very little small windows of connection between partners. And so like, even just that one act has like opened up space for us to spend time with each other, which sounds like so silly, like, but I don't know. I think your whole life changes when you really start to be mindful of like how your behaviors are impacting your whole life. Like it makes sense that you're feeling dissatisfied physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, et cetera, environmentally, when you're making consistent choices that are not aligned with the life that you desire for yourself. So yeah. Truly great.
Yeah. If there's one thing I hope you take away from today's episode, it's this. Healing isn't just about what you're doing. It's about the state your body is in while you're doing it. Because you can be eating the right foods, taking the supplements, doing all the things, but if your body is stuck in stress, in survival mode, in that constant fight or flight, it's going to feel like nothing is working. And that's why this work matters. Learning how to regulate your nervous system, learning how to listen to your body, learning how to support yourself in a way that actually feels sustainable. That's where real change starts to happen. And like Bianca said, this isn't about doing everything perfectly. It's about finding what works for you and building from there. So maybe today, your step is simple. Take a few deep breaths, go for a walk, put your phone down before bed, or just get curious about what your body is trying to tell you. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. You just need to start paying attention. If you loved this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming up next. Share this with someone who might be stuck in that stress cycle, and leave a review so more women can find these conversations. And as always, if you're ready to go deeper into your own healing journey, you can find all the ways to work with me in the show notes. I'm sending you so much love, and I'll see you on the next episode of PCOS Unfiltered. Nourish, heal, thrive.